I'm going to talk a little bit about Jonah and put it in more context. And, I don't know how many of us are familiar with the whole story of Jonah, but I'm not going to read, obviously, the whole thing. It's not a long book. It's only 4 chapters. It's, 1 page, 2 pages. So Jonah says chapter 1 says, "Now the word of the Lord came to Jonah, the son of Amittai, saying, Arise, go to Nineveh, the great city, and call out against it, for their evil, and has come up before me. But Jonah rose to flee to Tarshish from the presence of the Lord. He went down to Joppa and found the ship going to Tarshish, and he paid the fare and went down to go with them to Tarshish, away from the presence of the Lord." So God comes to Jonah, and God says to Jonah, "Hey, I want you to go to Nineveh, and I want you to preach. I want you to teach. I want you to tell them about me. I want you to start a revival in the city of Nineveh." And Jonah says, No, I hate those people. I don't like those people. I don't like the way they look. I don't like the way they dress. I don't like the language that they talk. I don't like the television shows they watch. I don't like the sports teams that they root for. I don't like Nineveh. And I don't want Nineveh to be saved. And I know that if I go to Nineveh under your calling, Nineveh is going to be saved. But I hate them, and I don't want them to be saved. I'm not going. So he tries to flee and tries to run away and go to Tarshish. And he goes down to Joppa and he gets on a boat. And then there's a storm comes, right? We see this in the next part of chapter 1. There's a storm. And now all the people on the boat, they're like, "Oh my gosh, we must have angered our gods. What do we do? What do we do?" And they start throwing things overboard, thinking that something on this boat is cursed. And if we just throw it overboard, the storm will end. And then that doesn't work. So they said, one of us must be something's wrong with one of us. Something's going on. And so they cast all the lots to figure out who it is. And all the lots fall on Jonah. And they go, "Hey man, all this is going on here is your fault. You're the reason why we're experiencing the storm." They throw him overboard. Now he's drowning. He gets swallowed up by a fish. He lives in the fish for 3 days. Right? 3 days and 3 nights. I got it right. Imagine that. And now he's in the belly of this fish and he's crying out. I read this prayer a little bit ago. I called out to the Lord out of my distress, and he answered me. The belly of this fish, he answers him. So then he repents. He says, "Okay, God, I'll go to Nineveh. I'll do what you want me to do." So this fish spits him out onto the shores. I believe it's back in Joppa. And now he has to go and journey the rest of the way to Nineveh. And he goes to Nineveh, and just as he expected, they received the call, they heard the message, and they believed. Even the king, it said, the word reached the king of Nineveh, and he arose from his throne, removed his robe, covered himself with sackcloth, and sat in ashes. And he issued a proclamation and published through Nineveh, by the decree of the king and his nobles, let neither man nor beast nor herd nor flock taste anything. Let them not feed or drink water, but let man and beast be covered with sackcloth, and let them call out mightily to God. Let everyone turn from his evil way and from the violence that is in his hands. Who knows? God may turn and relent and turn away from his fierce anger so that we may not perish. When God saw what they did, how they turned away from evil, God relented on the disaster that he said he would do to them, and he did not do it. Nineveh was saved. Happy ending. But it displeased Jonah, chapter 4. Displeased Jonah. He says, I knew it! See? I told you. These people that I hated are now not going to be destroyed. I knew it. And he prayed, Oh Lord, is not this what I said when I was yet in my country? That is why I made haste to flee to Tarshish, for I knew that you are a gracious God and merciful, slow to anger, and abounding in steadfast love, and relenting from disaster. Therefore now, O Lord, please take my life from me, for it is better for me to die than to live. And the Lord said, do you do well to be angry? Jonah hated Nineveh so bad that he would rather be dead than to see them saved. Jonah went out of the city and sat on the east of the city and made a booth for himself. There he sat under it in the shade till he should see what would become of the city. Now the Lord God appointed a plant and made it come up over Jonah, that it might be a shade over him, over his head, to save him from his discomfort. So Jonah was exceedingly glad because of the plant. When dawn came up the next day, God appointed a worm that attacked the plant so that it withered. When the sun rose, God appointed a scorching east wind, and the sun beat down on the head of Jonah. So he was faint, and he asked that he might die, and said, "It is better for me to die than to live." But God said to Jonah, "Do you do well to be angry for the plant?" He said, "Yes, I do well to be angry, angry enough to die." And the Lord said, "You pity the plant for which you did not labor, nor did you make it grow, which came into being in the night and perished in the night. And should I not pity Nineveh, the great city, and where there are more than 120,000 persons who do not know the right hand from the left, and also much cattle?" So you're worried about this plant, but you wanted me to kill 120,000 people? And then you claim to be pro-life? Matthew chapter 5, verse 9, "Blessed are the peacemakers, for they shall be called sons of God." And I'll change it a little bit if I have the authority to do so. "Blessed be the peacemakers, for they shall be called children of God." Something struck me this morning. As I was sitting here this morning, taking breaks between praying and meditating and scrolling around the internet, seeing the news of bombings going on in Israel and Palestine. And I'm seeing well-meaning Christian people that I love saying, "Pray for Israel, pray for Israel, pray for Israel." What about Palestine? Why aren't we praying for Palestine? Because then I see all my liberal friends posting all this. They're not praying because most of them aren't Christian people. But it's all pro-Palestine stuff. And all my conservative friends are all pro-Israel stuff. Like one life is more valuable than the other? Like one side's better than the other? And please understand, I'm not pro the Israeli government, but I'm pro the Israeli people. Just like I'm not pro the Palestinian government, but I'm pro the Palestinian people. I'm not pro the American government, but I'm pro American people. I'm pro people. I'm pro life. We are called to be peacemakers. And if we're saying pray for Israel and not pray for Palestine, we're picking a side. And we're never going to be peacemakers if we're picking a side. But we have determined that that side is evil, and we don't want that side to be saved. We want that side to be defeated. Like that's God's will? For man-made bombs to take out people's lives? I'm not saying one side is justified and the other side is not justified. I'm saying neither side is justified in taking the life of somebody else. And we are not justified as Christian men and women to say one side is right and the other side is wrong. We cannot be Jonah and say that side, the Palestinians are not worthy of our salvation. The Palestinians are not worthy of our love and our grace. The Palestinians are not worthy of our prayers. But that's exactly what we say. Because they're enemies of Israel, and we're told by our politics that we are to be pro the Israeli government. And that anything the Israeli government does, we need to support. The Israeli people are dying. Palestinian people are dying. How can we support any action that's causing somebody to lose their life? Specifically, when I can ask the question, who are we? And we all answer that question, we are children of God. And if we are children of God, we need to be peacemakers. And how can we be peacemakers if we're picking a side? It's not the role of the peacemaker to pick a side in a war. It's the role of the peacemaker to stand between the two sides and try to bring them together. Now, once again, I'm not going to Palestine. I'm not going to Israel. For many, many reasons. Most of which is financial. And the second reason is I have no business being there. But can I come between those two sides and pray? Not to pray that one side is going to defeat the other. Not pray that one side, that the Palestinians are going to realize that Israel's right and they're going to surrender and let Israel take over or conquer whatever they're fighting about. Because once again, please understand that this battle didn't just, or this war didn't just start this week. This war's been going on since before Jesus was born. It's going to end well after I'm dead. We're supposed to be peacemakers, not war encouragers. We're supposed to be pro-life, pro-all life, Palestinian life, Muslim life, Jewish life. We're supposed to be pro-life. How can we be supporting somebody else taking somebody else's life? And say, yes, keep praying for Israel to conquer. Keep praying for the Israeli government to win this war. At the cost of mothers, children. Because please understand, there's a huge population of Palestinian Christians that are losing their life in this war right now. There's a good percentage of Israeli Christians that are losing their life in this war right now. And we're sitting there thinking, we don't want, Palestine is the new Nineveh. Iraq and Afghanistan, these Muslim nations, these are the new Nineveh. They are the new Samaria. Jesus went to the Samaritan woman. Jesus went to Samaria. Jesus went to the hostile country. Jesus went to the enemy territory. Jesus praised them. Jesus told a story. Jesus stood in Israel, in the heart of Israel, and he told the story of the good Palestinian when he told the story of the good Samaritan. Jesus didn't pick a side between the Jews and the Samaritans. Jesus tried to get them both to see the truth, which is unity, oneness, not division and war. Because the war was going on then just as it is now. Are we going to be Jonah and run away from our obligation to go to the people that we hate? Because once again, it's easy for us to say, pray for Israel, pro-Israel, because we like Israel. It's not that easy for us to say, pro-Palestine, pray for Palestine, because we don't like Palestine. They're Jews, they're Muslims. They're terrorist organizations, Hamas and Hezbollah and the rest of them. We don't like those people. Those people are evil. Well, so is Nineveh. And God loved Nineveh enough to save it. God loves Palestine enough to save it. This is the work that we have to do that's greater than the work that Jesus did. This is the stuff that I've been talking about for so long. It's easy to love your neighbor when your neighbor looks like you, talks like you, and believes like you. It's not easy to love the Palestinian as my neighbor, because once again, I've never met a Palestinian. I don't know any Palestinians. So it's easy for my concept and my understanding of what Palestinians are, this terrorist state that harbors terrorist organizations. It's easy for me in that concept of them to hate them and to want to see them destroyed and want to see them bombed by Israel and then chant it on, yes, yes, yes. It gets a little bit harder for me when I recognize that those people, those Palestinians, are created in the image of God. The same image that God created me in, He created them in. And those Palestinians are my brothers and my sisters. They're my neighbors. They're Christ. Because the same Christ that's in me is in them. How can I help them realize that Christ is in them the same way He's in me if I'm dropping bombs on them? How am I ever going to get them to see the same Christ in them that is in me if I'm saying, pray for Israel, yay Israel, go Israel? And I'm not saying pray for Palestine. This is when it gets hard. When it's the people that we've been told our entire life we're supposed to hate. The people we've been told our entire life, this is the enemy. This is what the enemy looks like. This is when it gets hard. When we do have a clear and present enemy that we're to love, that we're to make peace with, that we're to pray for, that we're to go to and share the message of truth, the gospel of their salvation. And we can do it, be like Jonah, try to run away from it, end up in the belly of the fish. Then we can be like Jonah, who then eventually goes and does it anyway, and then gets mad. I knew you would say those Palestinians. Oh! Or we can do it with joy in our heart. And praise be to God that our brothers and sisters, our Palestinian brothers and sisters, have made peace with our Jewish brothers and sisters. Because that's what we're supposed to do. It's not easy. It was never supposed to be easy. Obviously, I'm not grateful for the conflict that's going on these last few days. I am grateful that God used it to help me use a real-world example to illustrate everything that I've been talking about since I got sick. It's easy for us to say, pray for Israel. It's not so easy for us to say, pray for Palestine. It's not so easy for us to say both governments are wrong. But the people are God's children. I want peace. And I get so disgusted at all my liberal friends going on and on and on about how terrible Israel is. And I get so heartbroken by my conservative friends going on and on and on about how terrible Palestine is. Neither one of them is the way of Jesus. That is the epitome of dualistic thinking. That one side is better than the other, when both sides are doing the exact same thing. We need to move away from the dualistic thinking and recognize that both sides are God's image. Both sides are made up of daughters and sons of the Father God. And Christ is in both sides. Christ died, went to the cross, was buried and resurrected for both sides. So who am I to say one side is better than the other? Who am I to be Jonah? I don't want to be Jonah. I'm tired of being Jonah. Tired of doing things reluctantly because I don't feel like I have a choice. People ask me, then what kind of Bible character do you want to be? I'm like, I don't know. I can't find one who did one joyfully. I can't find a Bible character who followed God willingly and joyfully and happily. They all seem to have a lot of struggle. I mean, even Paul struggled mightily with arrests and imprisonments and thorns in his side, wanting to die but needing to live. Jonah praying to die because the people that he hated got saved. Can you imagine that? Can you imagine hating somebody so much that you wanted to die because they got saved? So this is what we talk about when we talk about being peacemakers. And yes, we need to be praying for Israel. Absolutely. Without a doubt, 100%, we need to pray for Israel. But we need to pray for Israel to find peace, not to win a war. We need to be praying for Palestine to find peace, not to win a war. We need to be praying for people's lives to stop being taken from them. Because we're supposed to be pro-life, which means we're anti-death. It means we're not for anybody dying in any way that is not natural. And a bomb to your house is not a natural way to die. And so once again, this isn't, I was nervous this morning when I realized that this is what had to come out, because this isn't political. Because political is naturally taking a side. This is moving away from the politics of picking a side and coming into the middle where Jesus Christ is standing between those two countries, saying, please see me in them before you drop that bomb on them. How are they going to see him if we're not there? Once again, we may not be there physically, but we can be there spiritually. We can be there in prayer for reconciliation, if that makes sense. Blessed are the peacemakers, for they shall be called children of God. And I want people to see me as a child of God. How about you?